This is Bastille Day 2024. And there's a lot of stuff in the news right now. So I thought I would take a moment to give you my rant on things in the news in a way that is germane to what we're doing here. So here it goes. Here's what I've found. Every good thing is of God, and every evil thing is from yourselves. Will ye not comprehend? That's a tough one. And here's another good one. Quote goes like this: Yea, such things as throw consternation into the hearts of all men come to pass only that each soul may be tested by the touchstone of God, that the true may be known and distinguished from the false. What does that mean? The thing creating consternation is unimportant in and of itself. What is important is your response to it, and that your heart remains true to the love of God. That's what I think it means to me. It may mean other things to other people. And what does that mean? How do you put that into play? Be kind to everyone anyway. It's a wonderful little quote. It's from page 52 of the Kitabi Agan. Yea, such things as throw consternation into the hearts of all men come to pass only that each soul may be tested by the touchstone of God, that the true may be known and distinguished from the false. A touchstone was a black silicous rock like chert or flint, black flint rock, that in the old days they used to scratch precious metals, because the streak it made either on the rock or on the metal told you whether it was pure gold or not. That's what touchstone means. Consternation, I think we all know what that is. So, can I do that? Yeah, I can, unless I forget, and then I have to try to remember. And then I'll forget, and then I have to try to remember. That's the way it goes. So, Bastille Day 2024. I like the quote because it applies, if you remember it, it applies to everything, both big and small. Moving on. A lot of Sasquatch stuff happened in the second half of 2022, and that's where we are with the manuscript. I'm going through the manuscript so that people who are also dealing with this stuff can see the order in which it happened and the pace at which it happened. Some of it is, to me, obviously high strangeness, and some of it is so borderline that you could dismiss it if you wanted to, and most people might. And again, the caveat is I can be wrong about any of this, but the evidence just keeps mounting up. So back in May of 2022, the evidence had begun to mount up. The first half of this chapter 19 was a couple episodes ago. I think the one with the blue boat in the harbor on the thumbnail. So here we go. Let's dive in. Also, about 5 p.m. on May 30th, 2022, I took the pickup to check on whether I could get the mower over the ditch crossing down in the woods on the way to the spring. That's about a mile southwest of here. I drove there through the fields, got out just west of the crossing, and walked down to it. Speaking to the forest, I told the Sabe what I was doing and that I would be coming along to mow soon. That I had left them a black stone at the house at the location of the most recent double tree break, 50 feet south of where I'm sitting. And then I recited aloud the noonday prayer followed by the remover of difficulties. Halfway through the remover of difficulties, I was interrupted by what sounded like an animated conversation of children's voices. It continued after I abruptly stopped my recitation. The crossing was dry enough with just a little water running through the culvert and some water standing in the ditch. There was no one around. I finished the prayer aloud, hearing nothing else, left, got the mower, and mowed the path to the spring without further incident. The children's voices phenomena is corroborated by howtohunt.com on June 16, 2022 episode, 44 minutes in, and on several other occasions since. Also, very recently, April 2024, Steve read an email from a hunter who heard laughter, followed by a Sabe stepping out of the brush laughing, followed by two young ones also laughing. The sound described by that guy seems very similar to what I heard, so I now think it may be Sabe. Whistling is also corroborated in the two episodes that Steve read at about that same date and on other occasions since. I'm going to get out my phone here and show you a photo. See if this will come up. This is a photo, I don't know if you can see that or not, of a log across the trail. This looks better. Okay, that log is a dead tree that fell across the trail. That is the path I walked down to tell him I was going to have to fix the crossing so I could mow across there. There have been 6 trees adjacent to each other with the top broken out, and this fell across the trail a few days ago, and I was able to remove it last night. I had to take the tractor down there to push it out of the way. Do I think the Sabe did that? No, I do not. That tree had been standing there for 10 years, and it finally fell over. Granted, it could have fallen 359 other degrees, but it fell almost 90 degrees right across the trail. I don't think they had anything to do with that. I think that just happened. I think they probably would think that was hilarious that it did that. But that was a picture of the spot that I just described to you. And that makes tree number 7 that's fallen across the trail. Not all of them may be related to anything, but that sure is a lot of trees. One next to the other, next to the other, next to the other, next to the other, to have tops come out of them that block that crossing. That's an interesting little wrinkle, and I'm just not sure what it's about yet. One of the trees that had the top come out of it is the same tree that I had put the Halloween eyes in 7 years ago or 8 years ago that all disappeared. And very recently I put a piece of blue glass up on a post down the lane, and it has an eye on it, and yesterday it was still there. It's been there for several days. So I don't know if the eye has something to do that either they're not around, or they're not interested, or they don't like that. Conversation is not something that we have really had yet, so I don't know what they're thinking. Okay, let's go back to what I'm reading to you about. This is an interesting part. Then on June 17, 2022, in the lane between the 2 open front sheds, I found the carcass of a young raccoon that has been skinned in an unusual way. The skin was still attached to the skeleton at the nose and paws. The guts had been removed and placed in a single, neat pile beside the carcass. There were no teeth marks on the skin, so we can rule out anything that doesn't have fingers, and raccoons don't eat an entire fellow raccoon in one sitting, nor are they that neat. There was no blood on the ground. There was only one small tuft of fur on the grass, and that looked to be the end of the tail. In my photo, the underside of the skull is to the upper left of the whitish-colored carcass. You can see the roof of the mouth through the empty lower jawbones. The hide is still attached at the nose. Also, you can see the hide is turned inside out and is still attached at the paw of the leg in the middle of the remains. I wrote in my journal, "This happened in the last 24 hours because I mowed yesterday and it was not there at that time. A very neat eater, this one." I did not collect this specimen because I felt it would be rude. On June 22nd, I wrote the following. This is 5 days later. Quote, "A second raccoon was found tonight. I had mowed yesterday, Wednesday, 6/21 at sunset, and this evening, less than an hour ago, about 6:30 p.m., I found the carcass of a second raccoon. The front legs had been pulled off and eaten, with the paws remaining on the limbs, and the rest had been skinned in one piece, the pelt still attached at the hind feet and tail, all having been turned inside out in skin-a-cat fashion, and the carcass munched clean to the bone. I have photos of the raccoon of 6/22 as well." I'll try to put those up quickly because they're not the prettiest thing to look at, but they're dispositive of what happened. While this raccoon thing was happening, a mulberry tree on Pro's side of the lane had its top broken out over, had its twin top broken over at a V, a notch, 12 feet up, one side to the east and the other half to the west. Lightning? Maybe, but there were no burn marks, no explosion of vaporized moisture, and no lightning scar to the ground. Also, the maple just north of this mulberry has a single small branch almost broken off and curled around to the northeast, pointing at my house, like a child emulating a bigger brother. My surmise, I don't know this, of course. This journal entry was made 6/26/2022. I had seen the tree, but my neighbors pointed it out to me today. I put a question about double breaks in Scott Carpenter's comments on his YouTube post dated the same day. I have not heard back, and sadly Scott Carpenter passed away suddenly in the summer of 2023, last year. Also on June 26, 2022, at about 6 p.m., my daughter called my wife and asked for a lift back from the spring. She reported a similar being watched feeling, only less intense, as she started her walk. She had felt that she had to look at the tree line to the west as she stood on the trail, almost at the exact spot where the second raccoon carcass was found. The location is just south of where the trail from our house joins the main part of the mowed lane. And that's all just a quarter of a mile over here west. She also said that the spot she was looking at was where the bear was when it had suddenly decided to run away from her. As you will recall, she said she was walking backwards towards the house, and the bear had advanced out in the field to the west across the lane waterway. Then, as she was backing away, it suddenly turned and ran away, as if Susie made itself known. She calls him Susie. She had started referring to the Sabe as Susie, so I said, we'll call it Susie until we learn better. What I'm talking about, I'll include a photo of that as well. We saw, my wife and my daughter saw some sort of large black bear-like animal a couple of times in the same day, a year or so earlier. And this did not occur June 26th of 2022. It was in the fall of some year earlier. I don't remember off the top of my head when. And it certainly looks odd. It has a real wide rump, and I'm not sure what it is. Okay, September. Now we're going on from June 26th to September 17th, 2022. The key incident. On September 17th, 2022, I wrote, "Last week I found a string of my dad's old keys in front of my truck, which was parked between the middle house and the lodge, right beside this building. I had supposed they must have fallen out of something someone was carrying, but no one that I knew had carried out any old stuff. Note, as I am proofreading this manuscript tonight, it is January 30th, 2024. A couple weeks ago, I lost a pair of reading glasses. Tonight, as I return to proofread after putting the chickens in for the night, right where I found the first string of keys mentioned above, there on the ground were my reading glasses. I rinsed and dried them, and I am wearing them now. Probably nothing but coincidence, maybe. Yesterday, September 16, 2022, I walked my dog and found a little cross made with 2 sticks on the path to the burn pile at the west end of the 2-acre hayfield just west of the house. I can put that photo up as well. It's not a compelling photograph, just 2 little sticks on the ground. This got me thinking, and I recalled seeing some old keys from a spring cleaning some years earlier. I then went to an old open front pole shed very near the first raccoon carcass location to look for the source of the keys. I found a red plastic Folgers 1-pound coffee tub full of keys that had been lifted out of a tub of junk and then dumped out on the dirt in the shed where the old Jeep had been parked for years. I had the Jeep towed to a mechanic in Quincy to try to make it run. In the journal I wrote, last night I was at the south side of the wagon by the lodge. Today I found 4 sets of keys on the south side of the wagon where I was last night. They were dry, clean, and had not been there very long. A raccoon made 4 trips carrying keys? I don't think so. I keep wondering if the keys were tossed or dropped where they landed. I mean, were they tossed or were they dropped? I am now quite sure the keys were placed where I would have to find them. October 2nd, 2022. My daughter found the shell of a palm-sized box turtle, palm-sized, on the trail that had been eaten, basically sucked out of the front of its shell. The turtle shell was not chewed up. There was no blood, just the top and bottom of the shell. Maybe a raccoon, maybe not, but neat, clean, and left on the trail. This was the second turtle incident, but not the last. October 4th, 2022, 3 a.m. Barbara heard through an open window of the middle house what sounded like a hooty-sounding voice in the note range of an owl, but she immediately knew it was not an owl. Too many notes and the wrong phrasing. Plus there was an overlay of another voice. There was a pause, and she heard it again, but in a different pattern, again with what sounded like a second voice overlay. It lasted long enough that she thought about trying to record it and said if it had happened a third time, she would have awakened me. But she did not hear it again. It was the classic, an audible conversation, but she couldn't make out any words. That's October 4th. 3 p.m., October 7th, 2022. I stumbled upon another string of 10 keys, this time in the mulch pile beside the trail just west of the middle house. That's just over there 100 yards. They were lightly covered in dirt, likely from the chickens scratching, but were otherwise dry. The ink on the paper key tags was dry and legible. My dad's printing and writing in pen. I took a photo and put the keys in the lodge. On October 16th, 2022, just over a week later, I wrote this in the journal. Last night, 10:15, October 15, was the first night Barb and I slept in the stone house. Barb was awake at 3:30 a.m., 10:16, and heard what sounded like men's voices outside for several seconds. She could not make out any words. The house is extremely quiet due to very thick walls. We have a single pane window and no storm window beside our bed on the south on the second floor. October 23rd, 2022. I showed Henry where I had placed the broken pottery shards in a metal bucket beside the burn pile. I've talked to you about that earlier, I think. The can had been laid on its side and 4 pot shards removed and arranged on the metal drum lid, not at all like I had left it. Everything had been in the bucket. A raccoon could do this, but everything had been burned up in the brush pile fire. There was nothing edible in the bucket, is my point. The next day, October 24th, 2022, at 3 a.m., at the middle house, our little dog Khaleesi started barking because somehow the tin trash can lid from just outside her open dog door pen had gotten placed over the door of the smaller cage that is adjacent to the house, thus keeping her in the hog panel cage and out of the larger pen. Let me explain. There's a dog door, and then I've got a little covered dog run because the dog's only that high. So I've got this little, make it out of some old hog panels, covered in a tarp, so that when the snow is higher than she is, she can get to the ground and do her business. Then there's another little opening that she can go out into a 20 by 20 foot pen and do her business out there on normal times. And somehow a tin trash can lid had been placed over the outside door of this little dog run to keep her in that. That just doesn't happen. The cage opening and the tin trash can are about 5 feet apart, and the can lid was on the other side of a low fence slightly taller than the 20-gallon trash can. Something had set it over the lid, over the little fence that keeps her in her run, and put it over that door. December 14th, 2022. I want to add that a few years back, at the ditch crossings by the first bench, just where the trail starts up the first Remover of Difficulties hill, 1/4 mile west of the house, I would often smell something dead. If you live in the country, you know what I mean. I had not mentioned it before, but in hindsight, the odor would come and go in the same spot and often last days longer than it probably should for a dead raccoon or possum. That is, I would smell it at the same place on and off over several walks. I now wonder if it was a Sabe smell offered up while we were new to being back home. It is hard to know if this is the same stench people describe in their emails to howtohunt.com or not. Just thought I should mention it in case it occurs again. I was raised on a hog farm after all. In the old days, there was always something stinky on the farm, so we pretty much just ignored bad smells. And that is the end of chapter 19. So there, in 2022, a whole bunch of stuff happened. You could ignore it all. But the keys are really weird. It's all really weird. The hides. Let me be clear. Those of you who know trappers, if a trapper is going to skin something like a muskrat, that's how they do it. They turn the hide inside out. They do it that way. That is the most efficient way. But if you're a trapper, you do it in season with a license. You don't want to touch a skin that's taken out of season because there are serious legal ramifications for that. Most trappers don't want to get involved in that stuff. Also, if it's out of season, the hide is green. That means you can't use it for anything. The fur doesn't stay on it, and it doesn't tan well. That's why the seasons are when they are, is because that's the best time to collect the hides. Also, the hides were left. Now maybe I'm debunking a hoaxer here. Somebody who knew how to do that could turn a hide inside out. It doesn't take that much strength. But how would a human get every bit of edible stuff off of a carcass with the guts laying right next to it, with no blood, no cut marks on anything? That there wouldn't be any cut marks by pulling the hide off, but when you look at those photos, all of the edible material has gone from the carcass, even up inside the skull. That's a lot of trouble to go to hoax me, and no one has claimed responsibility. So that, plus the fact that other inside-out carcasses have been found in the wild. I may touch on them again, but I'm going to go ahead and touch on them now. One down in the Ozarks, one over on the Vermilion River by Peoria. And they're deer. Big carcasses have been done like that. Plus, as I have said, I got a third one because all of this borderline stuff, I said, give me a sign so I'll know it's you guys. And what I got was a third raccoon carcass, just the skull, a couple of vertebrae, and the hide turned inside out with all the fur on it. Nobody knew I asked for that. So I'm pretty sure it's not a hoaxer. And as I've said, they know better than to let me catch them. So anyway, I think that is something that I would have anybody that's aware of this pay attention to, that inside out hide thing, because nobody's mentioning it very much. And if it's a real thing, then there are more inside out hides out there in the woods, done this way or that way. And it would be very interesting if anybody hears of anything like that. Probably the best place to share that would be howtohunt.com, because he has 300,000+ members. And if you want a lot of people to know about it, that would be the best place to share it. If you want to share it with me, yeah, that'd be fine. I'd like to know where it was, because it could be a Midwest thing. It could be a Midwest thing. Anyway, thanks for being here. I leave you with that, and I will see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.
Super cool. It is. Yay! Did it.